Good evening, everyone. Today's session is on switch statements. So, in the previous sessions, we have learned about if else statements, we have learned about nested if statements. So, basically, when we have some conditions and we need to have, we can use the if else statements, right? Like we have seen in the previous sessions. But now, if we have multiple conditions at the same time, like we have in our nested if statements, we can use switch statements, so they are more efficient than that kind of thing. So let's begin with the session and check out what are the syntax, how we use switch statements, what is the main usage with some examples, right? So basically, when we have it covers two topics. When you have multiple selections, you may be using switch statements, and like you have if else if statements. You have used if else if, or you may be using switch statement, right? If you have some number of choices, like I went to some restaurant, right, and I may be choosing first of all veg food, then I may be choosing some I may be pressing some number and getting the input that are related to only the rice, or you may say lunch or breakfast. So I have some condition kind of thing. This type of scenario is there. I have took one example also, so that it makes you clear how it actually works, right? Now you have multiple selections. Now if we have multiple selections using if else statement, right? Like suppose we have taken this part, right? You have taken a condition using if statement and then just printing one statement, right? This is single condition you have taken. But if you have a binary selection means this or that, true or false. Right. So when you have such kind of selections, when you have such kind of things, when you have to make the decision part. So in that case, we will be having some like multiple conditions, multiple selections in your program. So this is how it works actually. Why there is a need of switch statement. So this is if this condition is true, then true part will come here and else part will having the false part of the condition. If the condition false, that means it is executing this part of the decision, right? So your decision basically depends on the condition, right? And you are taking some selections. Let's start with your basic part. First of all, sometimes it is necessary to branch in more than two directions. Like suppose a binary selection may you have only two things, either true or false, 0 or 1, right? But what is beyond that? If it is not true, if it is not false, something else is there, what you are going to do? So you have some concepts when you have multiple selections. We can do via multiple selections. The multiple selection mechanism in C is switch statements. So why we are using switch statement? It is not we have only binary kind of situation, binary operation we are performing, only true or false. We can implement it easily through if else statement, right? But if we have if else if else if else if else if, multiple else ifs are there, so it becomes complicated sometimes. So why don't we have this kind of multiple selection using what? Using, yes, switch statement. Yes. So I had took the basic program that everybody does and able to write a program using if statements when it first learn about only if part, right? So you need to write down like this. If day is equal to 0, I would be printing Sunday. If day is 1, then Monday. If your day is equal to the value of the day is 2, then Tuesday. 3, Wednesday, and so on till Saturday you have. And after Saturday, if it is not between 0 and 6, the next error message they have given is as error or valid. Why? Because after completion of your weekdays, you need to mention something like it is out of your weekdays, or you may say error, or you may say incorrect input, invalid day. This kind of matlab by default you can give it, right? So these are basically what, when you have multiple selections, but you are using which statement? You are using if statement, right? Now let us see when we have if else statement in this part, right? So if else statement structure is more efficient than corresponding if structure. So now earlier what we have seen, if you have multiple ifs in the program, and at the last also you have maintained one if part for showing the error message, right? Now in this we can have if else statements for multiple selections also. I told you if else statements like else if statements you may use. So day is equal to 0, Sunday. Else if day equal to 1. So you have put number of conditions. Else if this is this, do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And your else part would be your printing the invalid day, incorrect day, or you may say invalid output, right? All this would be coming under the else part. So your else part would be having this kind of message, that is printf error, invalid day, or incorrect day, or you may say incorrect input or output, right? So in this case, like when we have multiple selections with if else statements, we may use else if, right? We are not going to use like previously I have seen if statement. So there are a lot of if statements. You are also get confused which part is to be written or what you have left, right? In multiple selections also you have taken number of conditions, the else if part you have taken, right? So this would be a very difficult task, right? Now to remove this part, what we have come, we have come into the picture with, yes, switch statement. Switch statement is a multiple selection structure which basically doing the previous task only. When you have a set of multiple condition, right? When you have a task of selecting any one of the condition, you will be given with multiple condition, you may be selecting any one condition, right? So if this kind of thing is given, you may be selecting, you may be using switch statement. So I hope you have understood why we are using this switch statement. When you have multiple selection structure in your program, then only we are using multiple switch statements, right? So switch statement have number of things that are cases within that. So I will be showing one example also. Let us first understand the syntax of that, right? So what is the syntax for this switch statement? The first part is like coming under this part is you are writing the expression, taking the keyword that is switch, right? Then writing the condition, integer expression or whatever test condition, test expression, whatever input you are going to take, whatever condition you have, right? For entering into the switch part, right? Then you take the case. Now this switch and this case would be a keyword. It is not a variable. You cannot use it as a variable. You can only use it as a what? You can only use it as a keywords. So these are some reserve words. These are some, you may say these are some keywords or reserve words that are stored in the memory, right? So we have, what we have done, we have taken it as a keyword, that is switch, and then we enter into the next part, that is the switch expression, and then we have the case statements, right? You have number of statements, you have multiple selections within them, right? So within first case you may be writing some condition like your day is equal to 0, So you may be writing like this, and then you want to execute, you want to print anything, you can print, and just use the break statement to come out of this switch statement, right? So this is how it works actually, right? Suppose we have number of multiple switch statements. So what it does is basically you have multiple condition, you have multiple test expressions, and after that, like if your condition, if one of the case is true, then it is going to execute whatever number of statements you have given within that case constant, and then after it break from that particular switch statement, right? It is not going to execute each case. These cases are only conditions, these cases are only multiple selections. The condition which falls true, only that part is executed, rest will remain same, right? So this is how it works. Now let us see the last statement of each case in the switch statement should almost always be a break. Why we have a break? I told you, if we want to come out from the switch case from the multiple selection, I would be using the break statement. The break causes program control to jump to the closing brace of the switch structure, right? Without the break, the code flows into the next case. So if you like, there are multiple cases. If we don't have break, it is going to execute each of the constant, right? Whatever you have written in the program. So why you are going to execute? If we have multiple choices, obviously I want one, my if my choice, if my condition is true, that number of statements will be executed. Now I want to come out from the that particular condition. So that's why we have used the concept of break. Break means the code flows into the next case. Without break, we have number of cases, it is going to the next case, next case, next case. So if we have a break statement, if we have a break in our program, it is not going to jump to the next case. So a switch statement will compile without a default case, but always consider using one. So basically, you may have a default value also in this. You may have a default value in this. So default is going to have your else part, right? Whatever you are writing in the else part, like we have given in the if else if part, this error message may be using some syntax, some keyword for defining those things, right? For defining this kind of thing when the condition false, or you want to give some default message like your selections are not within these cases, like whatever you have given the cases, we need to have a default statement which is going to be executed, right? So let us see one example how we use switch cases and how we use different switch statements, like how we use in our program, right? When you want to give your user a choice on what to do next, you can display a set of choices. So I told you it is when you have multiple choices, when you have a menu kind of thing and you want to select any of the one choice, right? And then you are going to execute number of statement based on that. So how you are going to do that? So you are going to do that with the help of switch statement. So in C programming, it is like widely used when we have multiple selections, right? The user then enters his or her choice. You must validate the choice to make sure it is valid before you continue the program. So it first checks the condition also. I told you, like if the condition is true, then only it is going into the cases. If whatever case is true, then it is going to execute that particular statement, and then it comes out of the that particular selection using break statement. So this is how it works actually, right? Let us take one example. I have taken one example. I have taken one menu and I have given some options. Let us see. It's very interesting to have a look on this. So suppose I have taken a variable, that is a choice that is taken by the user, or you may say like a variable, and that is of which type? That is of integer type. I have not taken it as a character type. I have taken it as an integer type and have initialized it with 0. Like at the starting, you need not have to like go you have to start your loop from where? From the from the 0. Now once I told you, in C programming there is a post test loop, that is called do while loop. Pre-test loops are those loops which first test the condition, then enters into the looping concept, right? Whereas when we have a post-testing conditions, we don't have to first test the condition and then moving into the details of this. No, we just want one iteration and then it checks the condition. So we may be using do while loop for this. So do while loops are what? Do while loops are post-test conditions and it is executing the number of statements. So let us see the number of things in this also. So you have a menu, like you are printing one message, that is menu, right? So I have taken as a menu part printf my menu, right? And in my menu you have taken the edit. First stands for edit. If your value of integer, if your choice is 1, that means edit part is selected. If your choice is 2, then delete part is selected. If your choice is 3, then quit part is selected. So depending on the input of the user, and it would be in a integer value. Again I am repeating, sorry, it would be in a integer value. First you enter the choice, and when you enter the choice, because it is an integer value, in C you use scanf statement. This is percentage %d, an ampersand sign, sorry, and then the variable name. So this is how basically we take the input from the user, right? So what conditions, what choices we have taken? One is for edit, two is for deletion or to delete, three is for quitting from the selection, right? Now once your conditions, once you select your choice, then after that you have your while part. Now you test the condition. So it's a post test condition loop. It is executed at least once. So this is the advantage of this loop. It is not checking at the start. After executing at least for once, it execute the statement at least once before checking the conditions, right? So now it has checked the condition, choice is greater than equal to 1, and the second choice is less than equal to 3. So if your choice is greater than 1, because we have taken only three choices, 1, 2 and 3. So if it is within this, then we can move into the looping part. We can move into the next part, that is switch case, right? Now in switch case, what we have to write? We can have multiple options, right? Now if your variable, if your choice entered by the user is 1, then obviously do edit is printed on the screen and it just breaks and comes out of the switch statement. This is how it basically works. When you have a choice, you write down the choice, right? You take the input from the user, and I have taken the input from the user as an integer, right? So like I have taken an integer value. If it would be a character, so then you would be enclosing within, yes, your what, double quotes or single quote, right? So for representation of strings or characters, we would be using quotes, right? Single quote, or you may be using double quotes for that. So like if your condition, if your choice is 1, then it directly jumps to this case, right, and print this statement and comes out of this switch case. And if your choice is suppose 2, then you can directly jump to the second case and just print the do delete and just come out of the loop, come out of this condition, that is break statement you are going to use. So this is basically how it works, right? So we have only three cases, we have only three cases, 1, 2 and 3. And yes, I have told you, this is the default case where you can print the default messages, right? So suppose your condition is out of number of cases, right? It is not 1, it is not 2, It is not 3. Now what you are going to do? You are going to choose the compiler automatically jumps to the default case, right? And gives you the output that is invalid choice, right? And have you noticed we have given this slash n? What is this? This is for inserting a new line after printing this message, right? So it would be creating, like, whenever the compiler is going to print this statement, it is going to insert one line, because so that it is not overlapping, or you may say the next content is not coming after that particular content only, right? So if you have multiple lines and you want to show it like line by line, you may be using some escape sequences. It could be slash n, it could be slash t, it could be, like, if you want to show some table kind of thing, you may be referring slash t, right? Or if you want to give some bell kind of things, so there are number of escape sequence which basically used in a program for like giving some indications. Right? Hope you have understood the basic concept of switch case. So here we have seen how many if else statements we have used, number of if else statement is used. Why not we have such kind of structure where we have only the cases part? Case 1, do this. Case 2, do this. If the condition is case 3, do this. So this one stands for this one only, right? And this 2 stands for this 2 only. So you need to understand this part of also, like whatever the case is, like it is going to match this part also. You are taking the input from the user, and if it would be a value, a numeric value, that is an integer value 1, then it is going to print like this and just come out of that statement, right? Hope you have understood this thing. Let us see some good practices in our programming language. Include a default case to catch a invalid data. So yes, so maybe sometimes we don't have invalid, or sometimes we don't have default messages. The compiler just run the statement and just come out of the loop. The user don't understand even what is happening in that particular loop, right? Like if you don't have the default case in this, and if it is executed, how the user is going to understand? Like if it is not within 0 to 6, it is just coming out of the loop, what is the use of that? So for this purpose we may have a default case. That is a good programming practice, so that in that case user and the compiler is going to execute if nothing is matched, right? And user can understood like your input condition is not within that particular value, right? Now switch day, like suppose I am having a switch day, switch case. Again, switch is a keyword. Day you have taken from the user, you have taken the value. Now again, if it is a 0, if it is 1, what will be your data type? That is integer, right? If it is some character, it should be enclosed within some quotes, or you may say single quotes or double quotes, right? So this is how we can understand also where it is a input, and accordingly we basically format our text also. Like if it is an integer, no need to point it in enclosed within double quotes or single quotes. If it is in a integer, directly write on the value, directly write on the conditions, directly run the statements. Yes. And then, like if your value is 0, what will happen? It is going to jump to this case, right? It is going to print the Sunday, right? And then just come out of this loop, that is switch loop, switch statement, right? So basically how it works, first of all it has the case 0, case 1, 2, 3, and so on. If it does not matches with any of the cases, what will be printed? It is going to execute the default statement, default message, that is printf error or invalid day. So this is how we have multiple selections in our program, and they are much more efficient Is this structure is more efficient than your nested is? Obviously. You can represent in like it does not make any complication. You have directly, if this is the value, this is the answer. If this is the value, this is the answer. Right? In that, the code is like if, else if, then you take number of conditions and then you take it. Right? So it's better to have a switch case rather than using a if else if statement. Right? A nested if else state structure is just as efficient as a switch statement, but you may have a complication in that case. Right? You can implement it, but you can have a complication in that case. How? Because it is not efficient like this switch statement, as we have observed also. However, a switch statement may be easier to read. Yeah, so that's why I told you, like if you have multiple if else if it makes a complication. A new user, a new developer has to read each and every case. If it is a switch case, this is the input, oh, this is the condition, these are the cases. This is how we understand, this is how we implement. Also, it is easier to add new cases to a switch statement than nested if else structure. So I told you, if else statement basically, it is beneficial, but it gives you a complex, it adds a complexity in your program. Right? So that's why we are not using that thing. Right? So if we have to have your multiple conditions, then we must be using what? Switch statements. Right? So hope you have understood and basically know the concept of switch statements and if else statements, like what is the difference. Because at the start I told you one thing, if you have binary selection, we can use if else. Right? We can use if else statements, but if you have multiple selection, we can use else if or switch statements. Right? We cannot have such kind of program in which we cannot like implement with the help of else if part only. So we can have if, else if, else if, else if. Right? For multiple conditions we can have both the things. Like in this, you have multiple selections, you are using every time you are using the if statement. If they this, if they, so you the if I want to add something in this, it would be difficult. Where should I add it? First of all, now it the for complexity also, or for making the code efficient also, we may be using the like else if again, that overcomes to this part. But after this we may have a switch statements. So switch multiple selection structure is there, in which we can have a input, and according to that we have a different selection criteria. Whatever case is matched, it is going to execute those statements and then just come out of that using break statement. Right? So using break statement, it comes out of that particular loop. So hope you have understood the concept and why we have used this switch cases in our program, and why it is more like beneficial, or you may say why it is more efficient than your this thing if else if, or if number of if statements. They are also used for the same condition, but not. Right? They are also providing you the same results, yes, but they are not efficient. They are not easier to understand. The if the developer is like adding some condition, it would be difficult for the developer also. So we have to think from developer point of view, as well as for better understanding of the program. We may be using for multiple selections, we may be using switch statement. Hope you have understood the session and hope you like this session. Thank you.